Honorable Dalal Salaha Peruma, Minister of Youth Affairs and Skills Development of Sri Lanka, Honorable Ministers, Honorable Deputy Ministers, Global Expert Advisor for Children and Youth, Mr. Ravi Karkara, distinguished youth representatives from 169 countries around the world, and my dear young friends. I'm so pleased to have been asked to address the largely youthful audience at the main plenary session on mainstreaming youth in the post-2015 development agenda, even for a short duration of 10 minutes. 2015 development agenda, as you may know, intends to build on the current development framework based on the MDGs in order to accelerate development and make it more inclusive. It is indeed significant that young people have emerged as a distinct demographic group whose views and participation are to be solicited in the planning and implementation of the future global development framework. As the Colombo Declaration is to be a collaborative effort by young people and policymakers, I certainly feel more optimistic about its effectiveness in serving its purpose as a document for future global dialogue on youth. I think one of the mistakes that we of the older generations have made, and this has been harped so many times, and sometimes continue to make, we haven't stopped doing this, sadly, is to make the youth feel that their opinions do not count. We seem to be feeling, let the societies and communities function the way they do until the youth are old enough to take over at some point in future. But are we really satisfied with the way societies and communities are functioning? We need to be asking that probing question ourselves. And do youth really have nothing of value to contribute until they reach advanced years? Well, what better way to offer an explanation to these questions than to quote a few simple words from the great Polish writer Joseph Conrad when he marveled, I quote, "O youth, the strength of it, the faith of it, the imagination of it," unquote. Let me say with conviction, this strength, this faith, and this imagination of young people are precisely the elements that uplift our societies and communities and make them resilient, stable, and richer. It is not recognized and harnessed. So what should we be doing to help the youth to do what they are capable of doing? The first thing that comes to my mind as a policymaker is empowerment of the youth. I myself have been a very young administrative officer in the youth ministry that Sri Lanka started way back in the 1970s. And I know the feelings that young people used to have in regard to what we are doing today as policymakers who are pretty old. Well, youth have expectations. They seek access to better quality education, healthcare, housing, technology, and productive and gainful employment. They desire to be consulted when policies are created and become involved when they are implemented. They have their right of say in which direction their governments should steer, since they will one day be the custodians of these nations. You're undoubtedly familiar with the statistics. Nearly half the world's population is under the age of 25. Amazing. And nearly a quarter are aged 12 to 24. Of those between ages 12 to 24, the quarter that I was talking about, nearly 40% live on less than $2 a day. 75 million youth are out of work, escalating youth unemployment to crisis proportions. What is the cause for concern is that this also accounts for 41% of total global unemployment, which is not likely to recover until beyond 2016. While 40% of the youth survive on less than US dollars a day, about 133 million youth in the world are unfortunately illiterate. It is apparent that the problems of the youth as a significant group of the world population, not only for global development to progress, but also to enable them to add value to the development process, thus empowering young people socially, economically, intellectually, and politically across all divides is critical to see tangible progress in global development post-2015. There are many interventions that governments can make. Take, for example, the connection between young people and information and communication technologies. Throughout the years, ICTs have not had a more robust and loyal champion than the youth. They have effectively exploited ICTs to dictate the trends in a major growth industry and fostered it to generate youth entrepreneurship as a solution for youth unemployment. Be that as it may, these are not advantages that youth all over the world enjoy. For those in developing countries in particular, ICT access comes at an unaffordable cost. Looking at the draft Colombo Declaration on Youth, I see the powerful potential for ICTs to cut across many of its recommendations to strengthen their outcomes. But for this, governments must go beyond simply enhancing access and become actively involved in training and creating programs aimed towards the empowerment of young people. Becoming ICT savvy does not only open doors for job opportunities, but also motivates and enables young people to learn about their communities and become active in the local development process. I'm going to take an example. The MAP Kibera project in Kenya. Kibera is the largest slum dwelling not only in Nairobi, but in entire Africa, and is home to nearly 1 million people. But strange as it may sound, Kibera had been identified only as an uninhibited patch of forest in all the maps. That is until 2009. I'm sure there must be some of our friends from Kenya here. In 2009, the young people of Kibera created the first free and open digital map of their own community to record data and news reports, map information about themselves and their community, and to use that information for action. Kiberans attribute the access of information as an empowering agent, allowing youth to hold their head high and walk into a meeting with government officials. Knowledge is power, power is self-esteem. That's what they felt. On another aspect, I would like to quote some interesting revelations made by a recent survey. It's a very recent survey that McKinsey Consultancy conducted involving more than 4,500 young people, 2,700 employers, and 900 education providers across 9 countries. Close to half of the youth surveyed said that their jobs were not related to their studies. That is 50%. And nearly 40% employers complain, the other side of the story, that they struggle to fill entry-level jobs because young people lack adequate skills. See the mismatch. But what is startling is that while 70% of employers blamed inadequate training for the lack of skilled workers, another 70% of the education providers believe that they have adequately prepared new graduates for the jobs. So total mismatch. This kind of disconnect obviously tends to leave young people in the deep sea of unemployment or underemployment. Employers, education providers, and young people must communicate with each other. You have a right to do that. To understand real requirements, and governments must start thinking out-of-the-box solutions to address education to employment issues. In this regard, it must be noted that the full potential of ICTs in formal education systems that will better respond to labor market requirement have not yet been adequately realized. Governments must align their development policies to integrate ICTs in education and coordinate with all relevant government agencies providing education, employment, skills, and technology. Vocational education should be promoted in a large way with the use of ICTs to reduce cost of vocational education. As practiced in several countries, simulation and maybe serious games can be propagated as 21st century form of apprenticeships to provide tailored, detailed, practical experiences to large numbers at a fairly low cost. It is also our duty to promote the engagement of youth in the science of government and to prepare them for the future governance of our countries. This must be very realistically done, sincerely done. Sri Lanka's own youth parliament, and I give a lot of credit to the young minister, which commenced in 2011 and now has 355 members representing all ethnic groups. These youth parliamentarians and a network of more than 10,000 youths from villages around the country actively participate in debates and in the decision-making process. The youth policy launched in February this year in Sri Lanka has made provisions for full exploitation of potentials in youth for the development of the country. Well, if we are to ensure greater success in the post-2015 development agenda, it is important to remember that we, the governments, policymakers, officials, young people, and other stakeholders stop functioning as parallel universes and engage each other. What is more important is to realize that the more we engage young people, the better we will serve them. And the more they feel they are part of the process, the more we will increase our public value to the entire community. Well, my generation did not see computers when we were born. The most astounding piece of equipment that I saw was a radio with valves when I was a small kid. In my early 20s, the mainframes were heard of, but I never saw one. In my generation, I am a heavy ICT user. Skill acquisition was not through formal training, but learning from youngsters of 20s and some instances in their teens. I'm very proud about it. I have great respect for them because they are my teachers. They are creative and innovative. Interestingly, I want to share this anecdote with you. My grandson of 4.5 years taught me to play Plants vs. Zombies, a popular game on the iPad, but he always beat me. The world today undoubtedly belongs to youth, without whom there would not be any innovation. I have learnt it all my life. Before I conclude, I wish to remind you of the Twitter session. His Excellency, the President of Sri Lanka, invited you to join today at 11:30 a.m. I'm sure you will join him. It's going to be an interesting session. In conclusion, may I convey my best wishes for your deliberations to produce meaningful outcomes and successful finalization of the Colombo Declaration on Youth that will be a reference document internationally on any forum concerning youth and development. I wish you all a very comfortable stay in our country. Thank you very much.